A waitress at a quiet cafe stands up to a rude billionaire, only to have his father show up with an offer she can't refuse: a private jet ride to anywhere she wants. But as she steps into a world of luxury, she realizes the man who offered her this chance has more than just a jet ride in mind. Will she take the leap into the unknown, or is there a hidden motive behind this extravagant gesture? The clock is ticking, and her life is about to change forever. The small cafe, tucked away on a quiet street in downtown, was far from the usual high-end restaurant the elite of the city frequented. Its charm was in its simplicity: mismatched chairs, wooden tables, and the warm scent of freshly brewed coffee. Yet, it had a loyal following of regulars who appreciated the unpretentious atmosphere. Mia, a waitress in her mid-20s, had worked here for the past 3 years. She wasn't a typical waitress. She had dreams of becoming a chef. But for now, serving coffee and pastries was enough. Her shift was nearly over when the door swung open with a loud chime. She looked up, expecting another regular, but instead her eyes landed on a man who immediately stood out from the crowd. He was tall, dressed in an immaculate black suit with a crisp white shirt that screamed wealth. His black leather shoes shone like mirrors, and his watch gleamed under the cafe's soft lights. "Table for one?" Mia asked with a polite smile, her voice barely audible over the hum of the cafe. The man barely acknowledged her at first, his piercing gaze scanning the room as if he were more accustomed to grander settings. He finally looked at her, his lips curling into a thin smile. "I'll take a seat at the corner," he replied smoothly. "Preferably somewhere quiet." Mia nodded, leading him to a table by the window, his eyes lingering on her as she walked away. She set the menu in front of him, expecting the usual order. Coffee, a croissant, perhaps. Nothing extraordinary. But as she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Wait." Mia turned back, her brow slightly furrowed. "Yes. You know, it's hard to find good service these days," he said, his tone laced with condescension. "I can't help but wonder how someone like you ended up in a place like this." Her expression hardened for a split second, but she kept her cool. "I enjoy the work I do, sir. Is there anything else I can get you?" He smirked, clearly amused by her composure. "Bring me the best coffee you have. And I mean the best." Mia nodded, maintaining her professional demeanor. As she turned to head to the counter, she could feel his eyes on her back, a sense of unease creeping up her spine. She had seen this before. Rich men who thought they could control the world with money. But something about his gaze was different. It wasn't just condescending. It was almost predatory. She returned with his coffee, setting it down in front of him carefully. He didn't thank her, didn't even look up. He simply continued to scan his phone, as if she were nothing more than an interruption. Mia stood by the counter, watching him out of the corner of her eye, her instincts telling her to be cautious. An hour passed, and the cafe grew quieter as the evening rush began to settle. Mia started clearing some tables, making her way past the billionaire's table once again. That's when it happened. He reached out and grabbed her wrist firmly, his fingers cold against her skin. "You've been eyeing me all night, haven't you?" His voice was low, a hint of arrogance behind it. Mia froze, her heart racing. She had always dealt with difficult customers, but this felt different. She looked down at his hand gripping her wrist, her pulse quickening. This wasn't just a random comment. It was a threat. "I need to go," she stammered, trying to pull her arm free. His grip tightened. "Don't be coy. I know what you're thinking. You want something more, don't you? You think just because I'm a billionaire, I can offer you whatever you want? Mia's eyes widened in shock, her breath catching in her throat. She had faced rude customers before, but nothing like this. She could feel the anger rising within her, but she kept it buried, not wanting to escalate the situation. Please let go, she said, her voice firm now, a hint of authority returning to it. You're making me uncomfortable, he laughed darkly, not letting go. You don't even know what discomfort is yet. Without thinking, Mia pulled her arm sharply, breaking free from his grip. That's enough, she said, her voice shaking with barely contained rage. Leave now. His expression shifted, a flicker of surprise flashing across his face. He hadn't expected resistance. For a moment there was silence, the entire cafe seeming to hold its breath. The man stood up, his face flushed with anger. You don't know who I am, do you? He sneered, his voice rising. You'll regret this. Mia's gaze didn't waver. I don't care who you are. You can't treat people like that. He took a step toward her, his eyes narrowing. I'll make sure you pay for this. You'll regret ever speaking to me like that. Mia stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest. She had dealt with arrogant, entitled customers before, but this was different. His anger was palpable, and she knew there was no turning back. He stormed out of the cafe, slamming the door behind him. Mia stood frozen, her mind racing. What had just happened? Moments later, the door opened again. This time, it wasn't the man who had left, but an older figure, a distinguished man with silver hair, dressed in an impeccable suit. His eyes locked onto hers with a sharpness that immediately commanded attention. He stepped toward Mia, his voice calm yet authoritative. You must be Mia, he said, as if he already knew her name. I'm Charles Malden, the father of the man you just kicked out. Mia blinked, surprised by his appearance. What do you want? He smiled gently, a kind, almost grandfatherly smile. I understand there was a bit of a misunderstanding with my son. I'd like to make it right. How about a private jet ride, just you and me? We can go anywhere you like. Mia's heart skipped a beat. A private jet ride? Was this for real? Why would you offer me that? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. He looked at her, his gaze steady. Because you stood up for yourself. And sometimes, standing up to the wrong people brings unexpected rewards. She didn't know whether to be flattered or confused. But one thing was certain. Her life had just taken a very unexpected turn. Mia stood there, trying to process the unexpected turn her evening had taken. The man, Charles Malden, stood before her with a calm smile, as if offering a private jet ride was the most natural thing in the world. The weight of his words hung in the air, and Mia felt a strange mix of confusion, intrigue, and disbelief. She had never been offered anything like this in her life. A private jet ride, she repeated, still trying to wrap her mind around it. Charles nodded, his silver hair glinting in the dim light of the cafe. Yes, a private jet ride. I understand that my son's behavior was ... inappropriate. I want to make things right. Mia blinked, her thoughts racing. She had just kicked his son out of the cafe for misbehaving. And now this man, a complete stranger, was offering her a lavish experience. Why? What did he want from her? Was this just an attempt to silence her or buy her off? But why me? She asked, her voice shaky. Why are you offering me this? Charles smiled again, his expression softening. Because you stood up to him. Most people would have let him get away with it, but you didn't. That takes courage. I respect that. Mia wasn't sure if she should be flattered or if she should be suspicious of his sudden kindness. She'd never been one to accept charity, especially from strangers. I appreciate the offer, but I don't understand. What's the catch? She asked cautiously. Charles's eyes twinkled, and he stepped a little closer. No catch. Just a way to make amends for my son's behavior. I promise, no strings attached. Mia could feel the tension in her body, every nerve alert. Was this really happening? A part of her wanted to say no, to walk away from the bizarre situation, but another part of her was curious. The idea of flying in a private jet, experiencing something she could never afford on her own, was too tempting to ignore. But was it worth it? I don't know, she said, her voice wavering. Charles seemed to sense her hesitation and gave her a reassuring look. Think of it as a gesture of goodwill. You've had a rough evening, and this could be a way for you to unwind and see the world from a different perspective. I promise it'll be worth your time. Mia took a deep breath, still unsure. She had always been independent, never relying on others, especially not in such extravagant ways. But this was different. This wasn't just a free meal or a discount. This was an experience beyond anything she could have ever imagined. She looked at Charles, weighing her options. Where would we go? She asked, her curiosity finally getting the better of her. Anywhere you want, he replied with a smile. The jet is at your disposal for the day. We can fly to a beach resort, a vineyard in Napa, or even take a scenic tour of the city. It's your choice. Mia felt her heart race. The thought of traveling in a private jet was surreal. She had seen it in movies, but to actually experience it herself, it almost didn't seem real. I don't know what to say, Mia admitted. I didn't expect this. Charles nodded, as if understanding her conflict. It's a big decision. But don't worry. There's no obligation. Take some time to think about it. He handed her a small business card. Here's my contact information. Call me whenever you're ready. And if you decide not to go, that's perfectly fine. With that, he turned and walked toward the door, leaving Mia standing there, her mind racing. She looked down at the business card in her hand, the weight of the offer sinking in. Was it really this simple? A private jet ride with a billionaire's father, no strings attached. Mia's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the cafe door opening again. She looked up, expecting another customer, but to her surprise, it was the man she had kicked out earlier, his son, the billionaire. He stormed back into the cafe, his face flushed with anger. I told you not to do that, he shouted, glaring at Mia. You'll regret this. Do you have any idea who I am? Mia didn't flinch. She had already had enough of his threats. I don't care who you are, she said, her voice steady. You can't treat people the way you did, and I won't let you get away with it. His eyes flickered with something dark, and for a moment Mia thought he might lunge at her, but instead he took a deep breath, his fists clenching at his sides. You'll regret this, he repeated through gritted teeth. My father won't let you get away with it. Mia's heart skipped a beat. Charles's son was furious, but she refused to back down. She had stood up for herself once, and she wasn't about to let him intimidate her now. I already told you, she said calmly. I don't care who your father is. You can leave, or I'll call security. The billionaire glared at her for a few more seconds before turning on his heel and storming out of the cafe. Mia watched him go, her heart still racing. Her pulse was still high from the confrontation, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. He was gone, and she had stood up for herself. But now, the offer Charles had made loomed in her mind, and she wasn't sure what to do next. Was she really going to accept this strange, unexpected gift? Was it a reward for standing up to his son, or was it a way to manipulate her into something she didn't understand? As the cafe grew quieter, Mia stood by the counter, the business card still clutched in her hand. She thought about the private jet ride, the chance to escape the ordinary and experience something extraordinary. But the nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach wouldn't go away. What was the real reason behind this offer? Why had Charles chosen her? And more importantly, why did she feel like she was being pulled into a game she didn't fully understand? The night had settled in, and Mia sat in her small apartment, staring at the business card Charles had given her. She had placed it on the kitchen counter hours ago, and now it seemed to be calling her. The offer was still too surreal to fully accept. A private jet ride, with a billionaire's father as her companion. It felt like something out of a movie, something that didn't belong in her life. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a text message from her best friend, Sophie. "You okay? You looked pretty shaken when you left work. What happened?" Mia paused for a moment, her fingers hovering over the screen. Sophie had been her friend since high school, the kind of person who knew exactly what Mia was thinking without her having to say much. She couldn't lie to Sophie, but she wasn't sure how to explain everything that had happened at the cafe. "It's a long story, but you won't believe what happened tonight." She hit send, her fingers trembling slightly. Sophie replied almost instantly. "Now you have to tell me. What happened?" Mia sighed and then began typing, trying to keep the details short. "Some billionaire came into the cafe tonight. He was rude, obnoxious. I kicked him out. Then his father came in, apologized for his son's behavior, and offered me a private jet ride." Sophie's response came quickly. "A private jet ride? Are you serious? What did you say?" Mia couldn't help but laugh, even though she felt anything but amused. "I don't know. I'm still processing it. I'm thinking of calling him tomorrow, but part of me feels like it's too good to be true." Sophie didn't take long to respond. "Mia, this is insane. You have to go. Who gets an offer like that? It could be life-changing." Mia read her friend's message and, for the first time that evening, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like. A private jet ride. A chance to escape her small world, if only for a day. To see something beyond the confines of the cafe, her cramped apartment, and the routine that had defined her life for years. But then doubt crept in. Was it just a bribe? A way for Charles to make his son's bad behavior go away? What if there was an ulterior motive? And yet, something deep inside told her that this was an opportunity she couldn't let slip by, no matter how strange or unsettling it seemed. "I'll think about it," Mia texted back. The phone buzzed again. "You're overthinking it. Just go. You deserve it." Mia stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the message. Sophie was right, in a way. She had spent her whole life working hard, doing what was expected of her. It was easy to feel stuck, as if the world had already decided what her future would look like. But this offer was different. It was a chance to step out of her comfort zone, to break free from the routine that had her feeling trapped. She took a deep breath and reached for her phone, dialing the number on the business card. The phone rang twice before a calm, reassuring voice answered. "Hello, this is Charles Malden." Mia's heart raced. She hadn't expected him to answer so quickly. She had thought she would leave a voicemail, maybe call back tomorrow. But now, here she was, speaking to the man himself. "Hi, this is Mia. I was thinking about your offer," she stammered, her voice slightly trembling. "I think I'm interested, but I need to know more. What exactly are you proposing?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before Charles spoke. "I'm glad to hear you're considering it. I'll have my assistant arrange everything. The jet is available tomorrow afternoon, and we can decide where to go once you're on board. You'll have complete control over the destination." Mia's mind raced. She had never been on a private jet before, let alone with a complete stranger. It was the kind of thing she had only ever seen in movies or read about in magazines. But this was real. "Where are you based?" she asked, trying to make sense of the situation. "I'm in the city, just a short drive away from your location. My assistant will send a car for you." Mia felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. A part of her wanted to back out, but another part of her knew that this was something she couldn't pass up. "All right," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I'll do it. I'll meet you tomorrow." "Perfect," Charles replied smoothly. "I'll send the details over. We'll take care of everything. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, Mia." The call ended, and Mia stared at her phone, her hands shaking slightly. She had made the decision. Now, all she could do was wait and wonder what kind of world she was about to enter. The next day arrived too quickly for Mia's liking. She had barely slept, her mind swirling with thoughts of what the private jet ride would be like, and more importantly, what Charles Malden's true intentions were. She hadn't been able to shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't entirely right. But the temptation of the offer of escaping her usual life, even just for a day, was too strong to ignore. Mia had just finished getting ready when a sleek black car pulled up outside her apartment. The driver, a well-dressed man in his 40s, stepped out and opened the door for her without a word. "Are you Mia?" he asked, his voice calm and professional. "Yes, that's me," she replied, trying to steady her nerves. She had imagined the car ride would be a chance to relax, to let her thoughts settle before the jet. But the silence between her and the driver was deafening. Mia's mind raced. She was heading to an airport she didn't know, about to board a private jet she couldn't afford, with a stranger who had an offer that didn't seem to make sense. The car ride felt like an eternity. As they approached the airport, Mia couldn't help but stare out the window. The massive terminals, the long lines of passengers, seemed so foreign to her. She was used to the small, quiet cafe, the daily grind of serving coffee and pastries, but this world was something completely different. When they reached a smaller, private section of the airport, the driver pulled up next to a sleek, silver jet. Its gleaming surface reflected the sunlight, making it look almost otherworldly. "This is it," the driver said, his tone slightly more relaxed now. Mia stepped out of the car, her heart racing as she approached the jet. She could feel her palms beginning to sweat, her stomach flipping with every step. The door to the jet opened, and there, standing in the doorway, was Charles. He smiled at her, his presence commanding yet inviting. "Welcome, Mia," he said smoothly. "I'm glad you decided to join me. Please, come aboard." Mia hesitated for a moment, still unsure if she was making the right choice, but the allure of the experience was too strong. She took a deep breath and walked up the stairs into the jet. Inside, the cabin was luxurious, beyond anything she had ever imagined. Plush leather seats, a polished wooden bar, and large windows that promised a view of the sky like she had never seen before. A flight attendant greeted her with a glass of champagne, her smile warm and professional. "Can I get you anything else, Ms. Mia?" "No, thank you," Mia replied, still absorbing the surroundings. She felt out of place here, as if she didn't belong in this world of wealth and opulence. Charles gestured for her to take a seat. "Please, make yourself comfortable," he said. "We'll be flying for a while." "I thought we could talk." Mia nodded, choosing a seat near the window. As the jet began to taxi, she watched the ground disappear beneath them. The city became a blur, and then they were airborne. The sensation of flying was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The smooth hum of the jet's engines and the silence of the cabin made her feel like she was in a different world entirely. "I'm glad you accepted my offer," Charles said, settling into the seat across from her. "I know it may seem strange, but sometimes people need a little push to step outside their comfort zones." Mia glanced at him, wondering what he was really getting at. "Why me?" she asked, her voice still wary. "You could have taken anyone. You could have gone anywhere." Charles smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. "You're different, Mia. I saw something in you when you stood up to my son. Not many people would have had the courage to do that, and I respect that." Mia felt a strange warmth spread through her at his words. She had never thought of herself as particularly brave, but maybe, just maybe, she had done something right for once. But why this? Why the private jet? Why the offer? She pressed, needing answers. Charles leaned back in his seat, his expression becoming more serious. "Because sometimes people like you get lost in their own lives, trapped by the routine, and they forget that there's a bigger world out there. This is a chance for you to see it, to understand that life doesn't have to be so small." Mia nodded slowly, his words sinking in. She had always felt small in her job, small in her apartment, small in her life. This jet, this moment, it was bigger than anything she had ever imagined. But as the excitement began to swell inside her, so did the questions. "And your son?" she asked. "What was that all about?" Charles's face darkened slightly, the smile fading. "My son is ... complicated. He's used to getting what he wants, but he doesn't always understand the consequences of his actions. I've tried to teach him, but sometimes people need to learn the hard way." Mia frowned, sensing there was more to the story than Charles was letting on. "So this is just about teaching him a lesson?" she asked, unsure of how to feel. "In part," Charles admitted. "But it's also about you, Mia, about giving you a chance to experience something different, something outside the ordinary, something that might change the way you see your life." As they spoke, the jet soared higher, the view outside the window growing more breathtaking with each passing moment. The city below became a distant memory, and for the first time in a long while, Mia allowed herself to relax. Maybe this was exactly what she needed. The idea of a new beginning, of stepping into a world she didn't understand, felt both thrilling and terrifying. But she couldn't turn back now. The jet was already in the air, and Mia's life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet fathom. As the hours passed, the jet continued its smooth flight through the sky, and Mia couldn't help but feel like she was in a dream. The world outside the window seemed so distant, so far removed from her ordinary life. The city she knew, the cafe she worked at, all felt like a different lifetime. Charles remained a calm, steady presence beside her, his conversation still as measured as ever. "I know this must be overwhelming," he said after a while, sensing the shift in her mood. "But sometimes, to move forward, we have to experience something new, something that challenges us." Mia nodded, but her thoughts were racing. The life she had known suddenly felt small, insignificant in comparison to the possibilities in front of her. The jet was an escape, but she was starting to wonder where it was taking her and whether she was ready to go there. "I've always worked hard," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "I've always done what I was supposed to do. But I never thought I'd be sitting here, flying in a private jet, with someone like you." Charles looked at her, his eyes thoughtful. "That's exactly it, Mia. Most people spend their entire lives playing by the rules, staying inside the lines, and then they wake up one day and realize they've never really lived. I want to help you break free from that." Mia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, unsure of how to respond. She had never seen life that way. She had always thought that following the rules, working hard, and being responsible was the right way to live. But now, as she listened to Charles, she wondered if there was more to it. "But what about my life?" she asked, her voice a little shakier now. "I don't know if I can just leave everything behind. My job, my apartment, my dreams." Charles smiled gently. "You don't have to leave everything behind. But sometimes, to grow, we need to step outside the box. You've been playing it safe for too long. Mia, it's time to take a risk." His words echoed in her mind as the jet continued its course. The idea of taking a risk, of stepping into the unknown, was terrifying. But at the same time, it was exhilarating. For the first time in her life, Mia felt like she had a choice to redefine her future. "I never imagined this kind of life," she admitted, still trying to wrap her mind around it. "I don't know if I'm ready for it." Charles leaned back in his seat, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "You may not feel ready, but sometimes that's when the best things happen. When we don't feel ready, that's when we grow the most. But remember, Mia, this isn't just about the private jet or the luxury. It's about the freedom to choose what comes next. You've been given a rare opportunity, one that not many people get. The question is, what will you do with it?" Mia swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle over her. The life she had always known suddenly felt smaller, more confined. And yet, the world that Charles was offering her, the world of choices, of freedom, of adventure, was something she had only dreamed about. But was it really for her? Was she ready to take that leap? She looked out the window, the vastness of the sky stretching out before her. There were so many possibilities, so many paths she could take. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was stuck. She could choose something different, something better. She could choose to be more than just a waitress at a cafe. "I don't know if I'm ready," she said softly, turning to Charles. "But maybe I want to try." Charles's smile widened, and for the first time, Mia saw something more than just the confident billionaire in front of her. She saw a man who genuinely wanted to help, to push her beyond the life she had known. "That's all I needed to hear," he said, his voice warm with approval. "Sometimes, taking the first step is the hardest part. But once you do, the rest follows. Welcome to a new world, Mia." Mia's heart raced as she processed his words. The jet had become more than just a ride. It had become a symbol of change, a catalyst for something new. The decision she made today would shape the course of her life, and she couldn't help but feel both terrified and exhilarated at the thought. As the jet soared higher into the sky, Mia looked out at the horizon, the possibilities stretching out before her like an open road. For the first time in a long time, she felt free to make her own choices, to take risks, and to build the life she had always dreamed of. And with that, the future seemed a little less daunting and a lot more exciting.